Hello, and welcome to a special live edition of Locked On Guardians. Justin will be joining us. While this is Locked On Guardians, we are live for any fan base, honestly, who is confused, needs information, wants to know how the MLB draft lottery works. It is a relatively new system. This, I believe, is our fourth year having a draft lottery, and there is a lot to learn every single year. So, with the lottery, we will explain what happens. We will talk about the ramifications and paying attention to who moves up and who moves down and the why of it. Big thank you already to Pat Binger and Gray Kids who are already making comments, and to the 28 of you who are live as we prepare to see what happens. I've got hello, George. I've got sorry, my cat is biting me. For attention, I have the Lotto live, so I can make sure that I am hearing it. That's why I've got the weirdness going on in my ear on the one side. But, I want to make sure that I can see what's happening. So some quick notes on the draft. One, Colorado, Washington, and the Angels cannot move up in this year's draft. They had high picks for Colorado 2 years in a row, top 6 picks. For Angels and Washington, they can only have a top 6 pick every other year, them being higher revenue teams. So those three can't move up. As a matter of fact, if you go back to when Cleveland won the lottery, technically they didn't win the lottery that year. And you're saying, wait, yeah, they did. They drafted Travis Bazzana. Technically, the Washington Nationals won, and they had to redo it because Washington wasn't allowed to win. Cleveland won in the redo. So in this case, Colorado, Washington, and Los Angeles, none of them can move up. They're picking 10, 11, and 12. I guess I should, don't forget to like the stream. That helps us out. I know you're joking, but there's actually quite a few quarterbacks. And last year's draft had a left tackle in it that I talked about. Who was the guy? Alabama had a player who was a left tackle. So that is, why does my phone keep turning off? I want to keep up to date on the draft. But we have had every year, there's quite a few quarterbacks, honestly. And then we have, a multiple, like I said, one left tackle a year ago. It's going to bother me. It was, maybe he wasn't his brother played tackle for the University of Alabama, and I can't think who it is now. The joys of getting old. You can watch it on the MLB site. You go to the article on it, and there's a little streaming video that for some reason my phone keeps timing out on. It's not viewing it as being in use, because the MLB site likes to not work properly. But to go back into it, talked about the 3 teams that can't move up. There is one team that has desperately to move up or they're going to fall back, and that's the New York Mets. They are currently slotted to pick 17. Unless they win the lottery and move in the top 6. If you move in the top 6, you are protected. You cannot move down. You have nothing happen to your pick. So if the Mets somehow vault themselves all the way up into the top 6, then they'll keep their pick. Otherwise, because of all their spending, they have to fall 10 spots down to 27, which is an interesting year because lots of teams have to fall this year. Toronto, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Phillies, are all moving backwards. That is why Cleveland, which again, this is mostly a Cleveland thing. If you're not a Cleveland fan, ask questions. We'll still answer them. This is for everyone because the draft lottery is not well explained. It is not well represented. It's not well done. We started doing this a few years ago and realized people need it. They want it. And that's what we're here, is to provide that information. But if you are a fan of, one of the other teams, ask those questions. But for Cleveland fans, if the Mets move up, Cleveland will pick 20th. If the Mets don't move up, they will pick 19th. And then Cleveland is also scheduled currently right now to pick 29th, no matter what, because the Mets pick moving up or down will not affect that. And then basically the only reason is if Zach Gallen signs for more than $50 million, then Cleveland's pick would, instead of being 29, would be 30. So they're going to pick either 29 or 30 with their competitive balance pick, and then they'll pick either 19th or 20 with their main draft pick. George, which team are you a fan of? I have the percentages pulled up over here. The Mets have a 0.67% chance. So if you are a Mets fan, then that's low. Astros, 0.34 is the lowest. White Sox have the best chance. Twins, Pirates, and Orioles. I'll drop into, trying to have the stream on my phone so I can keep you all up to date. Cardinals have a 2.35% chance to move up. But didn't they move up last year? Or was that 2 years ago? That might have been the Weatherholt draft where they got a slight bump. But if you're curious about some of the names, I did a way too early mock draft that I will drop here in the chat. You can look at some names. This was based off of just odds to pick high. And I will put that here in the chat. So if you want to look at some of the names for this year's draft class, it is a free article that, it's just, when I get the time to write, I write for fun. So I did a for fun mock draft. Rock Chalowski is far and away the stud of this class right now. You can come up with all of your jokes in terms of, we've heard them all through the years in terms of funny, witty little comments of, I'm trying to think where it all start. Like, I think about hockey with fail for nail because that comes to mind. But what was the first one of those? First one of those to come up and make one of those statements. But Rock Chalowski is the player in this class right now. He was a guy that I thought, could have been a first rounder out of high school. He was a quarterback in football, to go back to Bubba's question, and he has just dominated at UCLA. Now he's facing lesser competition in terms of, who he's facing lesser competition in terms of who he faces in the Big Ten. Okay, suck for luck. Yeah, that's probably the beginning of it. But I will bounce back in 1 second, everyone. I just have to do a quick pause. I think my kid is locked outside. Give me 1 second, everyone. I'm doing a podcast. Or I won't be right back, but don't come to the basement. Sorry about that. My daughter managed to find her way inside in spite of the million doorbells that I'm not sure if people could hear or not. But at this point in time, we're all kind of waiting and seeing how they're going to announce this. And the first kind of heads up in terms of if the Mets will fall backwards is who is picking at pick. When we find out who is picking, not necessarily at the first selection, not at pick 18, though that might tell us too. If pick 18 is Cincinnati, then the Mets fell backwards. If pick 18 is another team, it's either going to be, so if it's Cincinnati, the Mets are falling back. If it's Houston, then the Mets went forward. It's starting now. For someone asking who it is, they're bringing out the notification now. Guardians can't move up. Playoff teams can't move up. But they can move up if the Mets fall back. The Mets, as long as they don't move up in the draft, will fall back 10 spots due to them being over the luxury tax spending limit. So the Guardians can technically move up from 20 to 19 if the Mets fall, which is expected. Any insight in the Dodgers deferred money again for Edwin Diaz? I mean, they're allowed to do it, so they're just going to keep doing it because deferred money flattens the curve of your total cost, and it makes it so your luxury tax payments are less. So deferring money lowers luxury tax payments, and it lowers, what it's going to cost you in terms of having to pay luxury taxes. It's a way of circumventing and avoiding some of the luxury tax costs. So it's a way for the rich to stay rich when it comes to the Dodgers. Excuse me. But yeah, we will, pretty soon start getting some of these picks going in. If you're Guardians fan, by the way, if the Edwin Diaz deal did slightly affect Cleveland because Edwin Diaz means that the Dodgers are giving up their second and fifth round picks, and the Mets are getting a fourth. So Cleveland is now moving up in the third and fourth rounds. And so they're going to have a little bit more pool money thanks to that. And they move up one spot. So it's about 15,000 extra in pool money. And as people who follow this team in depth know, the one thing they do is spend just about every dime of their draft and the money they get in the pool. That is one area that they will always spend right up to the limit. And Arthur has a good point here as well. Inflation means the money they pay later is worth, yeah. So it's also too. The inflation always exists. The thing I'll say is because he's a draft eligible sophomore. So when a draft eligible sophomore has a bad year, he typically falls down even further. So it's like if he has a really rough year, he probably turns into more of a second rounder because there's just not as much data to back it up when you have a draft eligible sophomore. But it's possible. Guys slide every year. There's always a few players when you look at it who end up going much later than we projected them. I mean, they do it almost every year. The only time they had leftover money was in 2020. And when they did in 2020, it was a weird draft and just a weird year. I can get behind that. I got nothing against the Cardinals. So we are here. Here we go. So it's going to start here at 18. And again, depending who we see here, if it is Houston, then the Mets moved up. If it's the Reds, then Cleveland's picking 19. So it's the Reds. So the Mets are moving down. The Mets have to drop 10. Oh, the Mets would have been 14, actually. So they're going to move down to 24 for the Mets. So the Mets are moving down. So the Mets officially are 24th instead of 14, which means Cleveland is officially picking 19th in this year's draft. So Cleveland's first rounder is now officially 19. So this would be Houston if things go according to chalk, with Houston being 17. Houston is 17. They stay at their spot. No moving up for the Houston Astros. They move up one spot because of the Mets sliding, but other than that, it is the same. It is the Reds and the Guardians picking back-to-back, 18 and 19. Cleveland they have picked 19. It was not a very strong pick, I want to say. 20th was where they took CC Sabathia, so Cleveland had some history at 20. Next up should be Kansas City. And if we don't see Kansas City with this pick, then they moved up. Kansas City has moved up, and so has San Francisco. So we have two teams moving up here already. Kansas City and San Francisco are both rising because Texas was supposed to pick after them. So this means we have two teams in the top 6 we know now already, which is San Francisco and Kansas City. So two teams have jumped up, which is really bad when you're the Mets because you have two teams that moved up right in front of you. So Arizona is what you'd expect at this situation due to those teams that moved up. We knew that San Francisco and Kansas City had moved up. That was the situation. So teams are going to be sliding down. Every year there's a team in the teens that jump. It's, nice if you're a Kansas City fan. They've had a few jumps. They've had some good lottery luck, honestly, over the course of their career. So we're now going to see who is here at 14. This should be the Angels, right? No, not necessarily. Okay, because the Angels will be 12, basically. So this is Miami. This is according to chalk. Again, Miami Marlins should be right here. This is the team that has and this is what stinks for Miami. Miami would have picked 9th, but because two teams moved up and then there's the block of 3 teams that have to pick 10, 11, and 12, Miami fell from 9 to 14. That's a huge drop. So Miami is paying a big cost in terms of a drop down. If this is St. Louis, then St. Louis is also getting massively hosed with those two teams jumping up and then the block of 3 teams that can't move up in the draft. It is so St. Louis and Miami both drop 5 spots. Very bad luck for St. Louis. Sorry, team Big V. It's also bad luck for St. Louis. They went from 8 to 13. That's a huge drop. So the Cardinals and Marlins are both paying the price for where they aligned, because we know the next picks are going to now be the Angels, the Nationals, and the Rockies. Those teams can't move up and they can't move down. So they're just in these spots. That means the Cardinals, and with those two teams going up, the big cost for the the Marlins and the Marlins and the Cardinals. Marlins and so for those three teams, they can't pick high in the draft. If you are a smaller market team, you can only pick in the top 6 2 years in a row. If you're a larger market team, it can only be every other year. So when you immediately get eliminated, or so when they can't pick when you can't win the lottery, you automatically get shunted down to the 10th, 11th, and 12th picks. There's 3 teams this year. So those 3 teams that cannot win the lottery were automatically given 10, 11, 12. And we already know that 11 is Washington, 12 is the Angels, and 10 is Colorado. No matter what, those 3 teams are there. They can't move up. They can't move down. They're stuck in place, which, hey, you would say, well, maybe that's good for them. But the other side is like Colorado had the worst record in baseball, and they're picking 10th. Washington was supposed to have a top 5 pick. They're at 11. The Angels would have also been a top 5 pick, and they're at 11. So Colorado, as we know. So now it gets... I appreciate that, Jordan. That I mean, give me Brendan Donovan any day. I would love to see Brendan Donovan go in that Cleveland lineup. But now we're back to where it gets interesting. So this should be Tampa. If this is not Tampa here, then Tampa has also moved up. So we're looking to see if it's Tampa here at 9. So Atlanta. So Tampa has moved up. We now know 3 teams in the top 6. So Tampa has moved up. San Francisco has moved up. Kansas City has moved up. The Braves drop. And for a team that's projected to pick 6, they're now picking 9th due to the 3 teams moving up. That sinks again. That's top 10 going from more the middle to more the back. It's quite a bit of loss of pool money. And that's one of the other things. It's not just that you're losing out on the chances to draft players. You're losing that pool money that allows you to maneuver and sign, a larger group of people. The Athletics here, that means this is chalk. They move down. At this point, Baltimore would be the next selection. So if this is Baltimore, then we know that the top is set. Baltimore's supposed to have the 4th pick. We know that if Baltimore moves into this spot here, then we have our top 6. So whoever you see here is kind of the one team that gets left out of the top 6. Essentially, it's either Baltimore or Pittsburgh, probably. I mean, I guess the Twins, maybe. I think Chicago is guaranteed. So it is Baltimore. So the top 3 teams made it. Chicago, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh in terms of record. The 3 teams that jumped up was number 13, Kansas City, number 12, San Francisco, number 7, Tampa. To give you an idea, the odds of Kansas City moving up were 0.84. 0.84. Giants 1.01. They both jumped. The Rays 3.03. And I believe 9th overall pick, I'm trying to remember, I think the year Cleveland picked, they were slotted to pick 8 when they won the lottery. So very low chance at that top pick. We have 3 teams that have moved up so far, which also means top 6 picks will have 3 American League Central teams. You're going to have the White Sox, you're going to have the Twins, and you will have the Kansas City Royals. 3 of the top 6 picks will be in the American League Central. I believe that has not happened since 2024, where it was the Guardians, Royals, and White Sox who all had top 6 selections. So, yeah, Kansas City, I think in particular, stands out for just the level of jump. And for a team that has kind of a weaker minor leagues, it's nice for them. Now, of course, they can't really do anything with that pick. If anyone's out there like, oh, can they trade the pick? Nope. But they could trade their competitive balance pick. It also sets up a situation where, they just being able to get a top player. I got to be fair, though, with the Royals being a near playoff team, I'm really hoping they don't end up. I'm hoping they're 6th here. No knock on that fan base. But yeah, right now we have a commercial timeout. We're kind of waiting to see what is going to happen.
Where are we at, Jeff? What's going on?
We have finished off the initial batch. Top 6 is there. The Royals jumped into the top 6 from 12. The Giants jumped in the top 6 from 11, and the Rays jumped into the top 6 from 9. The biggest losers so far are the Marlins and Cardinals, who both fell 5 spots because they were right before the teams that can't move. So they each fell down from 1 from 8 to 13 and 1 from 9 to 14, which is a lot of pool money lost. So Marlins and the Cardinals are kind of the teams that get massively hosed. And your big winners so far are the Giants, the Royals, and the Rays. But we'll have to see. Big winners right now don't really matter until we see what the top 6 is in a draft specifically that has kind of one star and then some good players, but one player that we're all kind of drooling over.
So the Mets haven't come up yet, so that means they're going to fall, right? At this point,
they already announced that the Reds are 19 or 18. So Cleveland is 19. We know that. Okay. So they fall into 24. So we're just kind of waiting to see on, what's next, who is 6th, who is lower than that. Yeah. Yeah, the Twins have won the lotto before, but again, they just had the 2nd overall pick, so we'll have to see. I mean, they moved up when they got
the last time the Twins
Walker
got
Jenkins
helped out in the lottery, they got Walker Jenkins.
Yeah.
So I'd like to not have that happen again for the sake of the Guardians.
So someone mentioned this here. The Mariners are not at 24. They have to move. They'll move up one spot is what's going to happen because everyone moved down. If they were supposed to be actually, I don't think they would be 24 because they made the championship series, but that might be after teams move down. I'd have to look at exactly the order, but the Mets now fall back from 14 to 24. They have to pick 24. So I'd have to look and see where the Mariners would be, but the Mets are guaranteed 24. And now we're going to find out who's 6th. So we don't know. This could be any number. Kansas
City Royals are 6th.
So I'll, hey, they moved up. That's great. I'm kind of glad a division team does not have a higher pick. There's some good talent. If I looked at my way too early mock here, I had 6 being Tyler Bell, the shortstop from Kentucky, with Gio Rios, left-handed pitcher, being my sleeper pick at 6.
Pirates land at 5 now.
Pirates at 5.
So Chicago, Minnesota, the Rays, and the Giants are still on the board.
So the Pirates had the 3rd best record, so 3rd best chance. So they do slip here to 5. That's a 2-spot drop for them. San Francisco and the Rays still on the board. Teams who had very low chances could jump higher.
The Giants got 4th.
Giants got 4th. So I think you were slightly ahead of me. But the Giants, I mean, heck, if you're a Giants or Royals fan, you're got to be happy. You moved up high. To me, the 4th player in this draft, I had in my original mock being Drew Burress with Justin LeBron as a sleeper. There's 2 really standout prep guys, and Grady Emerson and Joe Lombard, whose brother is, top prospect with the Yankees, and whose dad played pro ball. And then, depending on your view on AJ Garcia, Justin LeBron, Drew Burress, like those are really interesting guys. So Twins nice jump for the 3rd. Giants. Twins are 3rd. Yes. Interesting. So we got White Sox and Rays.
Yeah. I don't like the idea of Rock Chalowski going to the Rays or the White Sox because A, he's in division, or B, goes to Tampa, who will definitely benefit him a lot.
Yeah. So just with this comment here, they're wrong. The Mets were slotted to pick 14th, so they fall 10 spots. They have to be 24th. That's the rule. So I don't know what they did wrong. But now we're going to find out who's the top team here. I'm rooting for the Rays.
It is going to be the Rays are number 2. So Rock Chalowski is going to be a Chicago White
Sox. So the team with the best odds got him. So we'll get to see a lot of Rock Chalowski. But the Rays, going 9-2 is still nice. They're going to get their choice of prep. They're going to get their choice of, it's a good year to pick at the top of the draft. So it's White Sox get Rock Chalowski. And
they can still screw that up.
Oh, yeah, they can 100%. I mean, that's the thing. I'm looking forward to whoever gets Rock Chalowski in 5 years and fixes him. It's been a really bad development for the White Sox, like to the point that we joke about, like, take every guy that the White Sox cast off because you'll be better able to fix them. But yeah, so we have this situation where the White Sox kept the 1st overall pick. We saw the Rays and the Giants jump up. The big winners, of course, the White Sox, as they got the top overall pick. The Rays, the Giants, and the Royals. And your big losers are the Marlins and the Cardinals because they fell back 5 spots. I don't count the Mets as losers because they knew that's what was going to happen when they spent all of that money.
So Cleveland, what could have been 20 if
the Mets moved up.
finished top 6?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only difference could have been 19 or 20. So they'd never picked 19 before, right?
I believe so. Yeah, they picked 20. That's where they had taken Sabathia. So yeah, I was just trying to pull up I'm going to pull up the competitive balance piece that had the.
Has anything changed in the competitive balance piece at this point?
Well, it's just that with Edwin Diaz going, it means that there is the Dodgers lose their 2nd and 5th round picks, but the Mets gain a pick after the 4th round. So for a team like Cleveland, their 3rd and 4th rounders move up. So it's about 15,000 more in spending than there would be normally. I'm just trying to pull this up. So the Mariners should be 23rd now for the person asking and talking in chat instead of 24, because they were scheduled to be 24th, but the Mets would fall from 14 to 24. So the Mariners move up one. So the Mariners are 23, the Cubs are 22, Tigers 21, Padres 20th. Wait. Okay, no, this isn't right. So this is already assuming the Mets move down. That's weird. Why does it have the Mets going to 27?
Because they must have drawn 17. They fall 10 spots.
No,
right?
But you don't draw a number. So this is weird because in my mock I had them at 17, but today on the board, their little MLB draft board had the Mets at 14. So maybe the Mets are 27th. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong here. The reason I assume they'd be 24th is because the little MLB lotto board had them at 14. I had them at 17 originally. So, I think that now I believe that I could be wrong because it would mean I was originally right in this and their competitive balance board was wrong. So I've been reading a book. And the funny thing about the previous number 1 overall picks, Harold Baines, the White Sox took number 1 in 1977 as basically he was cheap to sign. He turned into a great player, but they signed him significantly below what everyone else would sign someone for in 1977. If you go back and look at the money, he got a big discount. So I think what we're seeing here, honestly, is I think the Mets should have been 17. Yeah. So that's weird. So I think I know why the board was all messed up, because their MLB board online was listing at 16, 17, and 18, the 3 teams that couldn't move up at all. So they moved them down to the bottom slots, which is why the Mets were listed at 14. So that is what happens. So the Mets are picking 27th. That's where they'll pick in this draft. If the Astros will pick 28th because of Hunter Brown, and if Zach Gallen goes back to the Diamondbacks or signs for less than $50 million, Cleveland will pick 29th. If Zach Gallen signs for more than $50 million, then Cleveland will pick 30th. So we got a question here. With a full season of baseball before the draft, 1/3 of a college career, can a player outside the top 100 move up to the top 100s? Absolutely. A guy who comes to mind is Andrew Benintendi of the White Sox, because he was a draft eligible sophomore who people really kind of slept on, didn't talk about, and he ended up flying up draft boards that year to be, I think he was a top 10 pick in the end, maybe like 9th, or maybe he was like 12th. But either way, we've seen guys really move up boards. Players have transformed themselves, put up huge seasons, kind of made themselves. I don't know if anyone's like shot themselves so far up to like the number 1 overall pick from outside the top 100. I'd have to look at that, but Andrew Benintendi was not on any top 100 before his draft year. Now things have changed. Guys who are draft eligible sophomores definitely get a little more attention than they did then, and by little more I mean a lot. But yeah, there's definitely someone who we're not even talking about right now who could go 19.
Jeff, I'm going to jump. I'll catch you later when we record tomorrow's episode.
Yep. And we'll talk some Rule 5. I got my list already for that. And I'm sure we'll talk about this. And I'll make a comment, I'm sure, at the end about the Guardians getting $15,000 in pool money today. Technically a little more. I'll discuss that here with these guys, though.
Cool. All right. Catch y'all later.
Catch you later. So what I want to pull up really quick is the draft tracker, because technically now we can say for sure that they are 19th. And a year ago, the difference between picking 19 and the difference between picking 20th was a difference, again, because it's not just about where you pick. It's about the pool money, because the pool money, the more money that is in your pool, that's how much money you get total. And you can spend up to 5% minus 1 penny. And when that happens, that's how much money you're allowed to spend. And a team like Cleveland always spends to that and then over. So last year, the difference between pick 19 and pick 20 was the equivalent of $150,000. So how much did the Cardinals lose? I don't want to do this to you, bud, but 6.18 to 5 point. They lost basically $1 million in pool money, which when you add in the 5%, it's it's even more in that regard what they could spend. But they lost $1 million. Going up from the Royals were set to be 13th, and they went from 13 to 6. So the Royals got up to 7.56 a year ago. So the Royals gained $2 million. So the Cardinals lost $1 million. $2 million gain for the Royals, going 9-2 for Tampa. They went from Tampa just gained about $4 million. So Tampa had just a phenomenal move up. And then the Giants, I believe, are picking 4, right? So with the Giants moving up to 4, they gained they gained 2.7 million. So yep, the Royals gained about 2 million, 2.7 million to the 2.7 to the Giants. And the White Sox are the big winners because Rock Chalowski is about the highest rated guy I have had in a few years as the top overall pick right now. Things can always change, but he just seems to do it all. And I was going to look that up earlier. I believe he's just a guy who's grown up in the game. His dad, I think, is a coach, or maybe Dan Chalowski. His dad was a minor league baseball player. His dad was a first round pick in the 1991 draft, as a matter of fact, by the St. Louis Cardinals. So there we go. 1991 catcher. Pick 39 overall. So that wasn't a first rounder, even though that UCLA's site wants to tell me that he was. But his dad is a scout for the Reds. So his dad was a major leaguer. He's a scout for the Reds. He's the top overall guy. Probability of an outfield impact outfield bat. So in my mock, I had them going with a prep arm because they've gone a little bit more that way. If I was looking at my mock, which again, I have to update and change, the top hitters, Von Lackey, the catcher from Georgia Tech, who doesn't have power but is a supreme athlete. Blake Bowen can make some sense. He started to show a little bit more power. He was previously kind of a 4-tool guy. Jay Sarah is about as good of a high school program as there is in this entire country. So Blake Bowen could be a guy to watch. Then again, I also feel like that dude is raising so quickly that I don't know if he'd be here just based on my mock. He's a guy I'd look at that pick. If they liked older brothers, Eric Becker, shortstop for Virginia, is kind of in that range. Brady Harris has a lot of interesting tools if they want to go with a prep outfielder, but they love California kids. So if I'm redoing my mock, which hopefully I can get done before Christmas, Blake Bowen would be the guy I would probably pencil into Cleveland. They like younger brothers, but not as much as I almost said I do, but I don't want that to get clipped. Trevor Condon is very different than his brother. He's speed over power. Also in this class, in that range, is I'm going to get it wrong because I easily confuse myself, is Jaron Avancula, whose brother is, in Cleveland system. So they could get, his younger brother who's got some Sal Frelick vibes to it. There's a lot of younger brothers in this class. There's a lot of guys who can stand out in that regard. There's even in my mock, I had the Dodgers sleeper pick being Matt Patonsky, who's a shortstop from Archbishop Moeller High School, who's committed to Kentucky, both as a quarterback and as a shortstop. So, there's some Ohio kids. It's going to be interesting. Cleveland, again, I hope Zach Allen goes back to Arizona just to help Cleveland get a little bit of a higher pick. Here's the problem. He lost all of last year. He didn't have a very good year last year. There's a lot of swing and miss. I would think Lavalette is going to be, I would bet, due to some of his struggles trying to rebuild some confidence, he starts the year in low A. Maybe he touches high A, but then I think there's a good chance that he doesn't get up to double A for 2 years. and they like to guys to spend. I mean, I think he is the end of 3 years to 4 years away from the big leagues. 3 to 4 years. Like they're going to slow play him. He had the injury. They got to work on his swing. People got really mad at me, but it's just the plain simple truth. Like I don't have a single success story of a guy in college with a 25% K rate as a hitter. People like to bring up Aaron Judge. His was 21 at his worst. Or they'll bring up like Mark Reynolds. Mark Reynolds had a lower K rate in college than Jace Lavalette. It's a hard thing to overcome. So he's going to take some work. He is not a fast moving prospect. He's not a guy with that strong hit tool. Great traits, great power. He can probably make it work even if he is like a 30 grade, 35 grade hitter, but it's going to take a while. It's typically guys who are more hit over power who move quicker. So yeah, that's where I kind of see him being. That's why he's not a top 10 prospect to me. It's just, yeah, I don't have one example of a guy who had his K rate in their draft year, successfully transitioning to pro baseball. And that just made him kind of a guy that I had is significantly lower, but I get it. At the same time, if you just want to throw down a lotto ticket and bet on ceiling, if you're playing some out of the park baseball and you're just clicking on potential and seeing who's got the highest potential, he was one of the 3 highest potentials at that point in the draft. A lot has to go right for it to work, but like if you're just gonna, bet all of it on 21 on a roulette wheel instead of trying to bet on a red or black, that was Jace Lavalette. So they went big. There's no doubt. And with him and Schubart in particular, they went very big, both on power and size. Yeah, it's I thought that was an interesting deal. And like I said, if you're a Guardians fan, it meant your 3rd and 4th round picks move up relative to all other things. So between that and the Mets officially moving down, Cleveland gained about $165,000 in pool money. And again, I know people love to focus on the negative, but all the things you can criticize this organization on, and there are many things you can. The one thing you can't do is the draft. They always spend not just the full pool, but they go beyond and spend that 5% extra. If you're like, well, it's only 5%, because if you spend more than 5%, you lose your 1st round pick the next year. So I would love to see a team go crazy. Honestly, I would love to see a team. I think one could make a case the year Cleveland had the top overall pick, there was a lot more depth in that class. Like in the next year's class did not look as good. I can take off my headphones because I'm not listening to the draft anymore. So, I could see a year if you look at the draft, I don't think anyone's going to ever do it because you're never that confident in how a draft looks. But if you see a draft that doesn't look as strong, I would love to see a team go crazy and just spend like mad in the draft and not care if they lose a first and sign multiple players who have 1st round value by floating them down the board and just completely disrupt the system. Like if you're in the Mets, go wild, do that situation. I would love to see a team actually do that because I think you could really, in some respects, dominate a draft year so much. It doesn't matter if you lose picks the next year. You have a lesser class. Who cares? You signed 5 first rounders this year. Who cares if you lose 3 first rounders or 3 picks next year? So I'd love to see a team do that. In terms of Diaz, I'm kind of surprised he just didn't get more years. I thought, I was like, oh, I'm surprised he only got 69 million. Didn't he opt out of like 101 million? It is the highest average value for a reliever. I get it. He was going for Av. I actually don't, isn't he in his 30s? I was kind of surprised that, he didn't want more long-term, but, I understand it is a big thing to set the highest ever average salary at a position. So I get that. That is certainly something that matters to players. So I'd be kind of curious, between that and Schwarber, we had some movement today, and then see what shakes loose. And then we also have to, tomorrow will be the draft lottery. Not the draft. Today was the draft lottery. I'm tired. Tomorrow is the Rule 5 draft. And, I think there's a lot of interesting names. I think it was kind of fascinating to see the Von Grissom deal with the Red Sox, because the Red Sox went out and traded Von Grissom. I like Isaiah Jackson, who they got in that trade. I think that's a good value for them because I'm not much of a Von Grissom guy anymore to begin with. But they opened up a 40-man spot. Unless they typically, you make those moves after you've signed someone. To make it preemptively makes me think like the Red Sox see someone they're going to get. And I've got somewhere around here, have it when we do the show. I've got a list of 7 names I'm going to talk about tonight. So the Rule 5 in Cleveland, that's where they got Eric Zabrowski in the minor league section. The major league section of the Rule 5 draft, I don't know if I have time tonight. Cleveland has been awful. They've lost, Hector Rondon. They've lost Anthony Santander. They've lost Willie Tavares. They also made a trade to make that happen. They've lost, and I'm forgetting names. They've lost so many good players. And Trevor Stephan or Tom Wendell, pick your choice. Which reliever is the single greatest Rule 5 selection they've made? They've had no luck in the Rule 5. They're due for some good luck. So I hope we see some with that. It is what it is. But it looks like I appreciate the 70 or so of you hanging on while I just ramble. Yes, that's why. Like, Trevor Stephan is their most successful Rule 5 pick. It's him or Tom Wendell, who was born in Scotland. I believe that was his name. Let me just double check that. A Scottish pitcher who they took. They have just struck out constantly in the Rule 5 draft. Nope, no, Tom Wendell is not born in Scotland, so this isn't the right guy. I'm trying to think of a pitcher in the 80s who was born in Scotland, who was their best pick. Tom Wendell is a weird grab for a guy who he never even made it to the big leagues. So that's okay. I've spent too much time covering the draft. It's the guy who was a second rounder back in 2013, and that name apparently stuck with me. But yeah, Trevor Stephan, and then it's going to bother me. Another reliever. They just have not ever had any success. I mean, Eric Zabrowski is probably at this point had more value than either of them, and he was the minor league section of the Rule 5 draft. But it's a pretty good Rule 5 draft year. There's hitters, there's pitchers, there's a lot of interesting players. We're going to get into all of that today. I'm sure we'll do a little bit of recap on the draft, just in terms of things have shook out for the Guardians. We now know they'll pick 19, and we know that third and fourth rounders have moved up. And the division got so much better, just in terms of their own draft position. I think John's one of our everydayers, so I appreciate that. I'm sure I could bother John. He got to see some of these guys in the Cape. But yeah, that's why we do this, right? I feel like my goal with the podcast is always the why. Like, why is something happening? My analysis can be hit or miss. That's anyone. Like, no one's batting 1,000 at this game. But it's always to explain the why. Like, why did those teams move up? Why did teams fall backwards? And then when I get it wrong, like I messed up the Mets pick, Mike is probably gone. I owe him an apology. I wanted to figure out the why of it. And I was like, oh, it's because they shuffled their board in a weird way. But my job is always to explain the why first, and then give my random thoughts analysis. I think he'd take a bit. Isn't he only in Double A? I mean, he's a great. I also don't think the Dodgers would be willing to trade him. I got to be real honest. He's one of the top outfield prospects of baseball. I saw someone mention like trying to get DePaula for. Is this an outdated list? I'm looking. Oh, this is because I'm not looking at the draft. I think Justin said he would drive Stephen Kwan to the airport to get him. Well, I got it wrong, Mike. I always like to apologize and figure out why I get things wrong. That's always the thing. Thank you, Disco Golf Dom, another one of our everydayers. But yeah, it's the job is to explain the why and the understanding of it. And I want to make a game that I'm always trying to learn more and share that. I'm a teacher by day, so I'm trying to kind of bring that to the podcast as well. And hopefully not be annoying in doing it. So yeah, I'm going to go see why it sounds like my daughter is coming through the floor. I want to thank you all for joining us for nearly 45 minutes, even though the Guardians were only temporarily to the side of it. And in the past, we've gotten more fan bases. We only had a few Cardinals fans in here. So thank you to those who joined us in that way. And again, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I appreciate you jumping in and having fun. I love the draft. It was like one of my first passions in life, being a kid of the 80s. Cleveland sports teams were often not good into the 90s. The drafts were where you got talent, and it's something that's just stuck with me my whole life. So thank you for joining me on something that is kind of a flight of fancy, and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much, and go Guardians, go.